Hey, it's Drybear. We've got some mixture of good news and bad news for the Path of Exile community as a new message has been posted, so let's talk about it. And to put the mystery to bed right off the bat, they are considering just keeping a lot of the PoE 1 developers, some of their more veteran developers that have been at the studio for a very long time, working on Path of Exile 2 until they can get at least the next major update out, 0.2. Now, they have mentioned that they don't really know how much content they're going to be releasing and when. We asked them in the last Q&A if they're going to be doing one class at a time and one act at a time, or if they want to drop, act 4, 5, and 6 all together at once, and 3 new classes or whatever. They haven't decided yet how they're going to handle that. But the news comes today, and something that I actually have a lot of personal experience about is that a lot of the PoE 1 developers were borrowed to work on PoE 2 to get that out the door, and now they're kind of at a point where they're wondering, can they actually go back and do Path of Exile 1 expansions as it stands right now, or do they actually have to stay on PoE 2 until it gets done, because PoE 2 still has a lot of work that needs to be put into it. There's crashing issues, multi-platform issues, there's a lot of missing content, there's not even a complete campaign in the game, and so there's a ton of stuff that they want to do, especially now that they've got such a major reception for the game. But let's look at what the message says and talk about what it means, and also kind of just share my perspective on it as being a developer who has worked across many projects, has borrowed developers to get a project out the door, or has had developers on my team borrowed to get another project out the door, and how that all kind of comes together.
Hey guys, let's talk about PoE 1. Now, when we announced PoE 2, we promised that we would continue to create PoE 1 expansions, and we do intend to keep that promise, but it's certainly been a lot harder to deliver on it than what we expected. Now, the trouble really started after Settlers of Calgar in July last year. The ideal time to have released 326 would have been late October, before the originally scheduled release of PoE 2's early access. But we just didn't think we could do it. It was too close to the huge circus that was the organization around PoE 2's launch. But we also didn't want to immediately launch it right after PoE 2 either, so that kind of ruled out December. So then we're thinking, okay, we can't really have a launch in January due to Christmas, so we're really going to have to do it in February. And this wasn't great. It would mean 7 months with no leagues. But we really didn't think it was possible to do it any earlier than that. And we didn't really announce this exactly, but it was certainly something that we had said to quite a few people over time, so the community became generally aware that that was our plan. The issue is this. PoE 2's endgame needed a lot of work. Having the guys on the PoE 1 team help out for 3 months on PoE 2, given that 326 was 7 months away, seemed like a no-brainer, and man did PoE 2 need it. The problem is, we got to the middle of October, and PoE 2's launch was imminent, and I'll tell you what, taking people off PoE 2 at that point was just impossible. The endgame was not in a shippable state. But you know what? We could still do it. If the PoE 1 team just kept helping until PoE 2 shipped in late November, we could still do it. Maybe the scope would need to decrease a little bit, but mid-February was still possible. We just needed to ship this damn game first, get it out of the way. We literally couldn't think about anything else until it was done. But we still had time. The problem is, we were fooling ourselves. PoE 2 was delayed 3 weeks, making the problem even worse. And then after the game was released, well, of course we had to immediately deal with all the problems. How could we think about making a PoE 1 expansion when we still have hundreds of thousands of people who are having bad experiences in PoE 2? There are crashes, there are severe in-game balance problems. How could I justify taking some of the most experienced developers we have off PoE 2 when it's on fire? Now, after the Christmas break, we had to really admit something to ourselves. The most urgent priority was getting PoE 2 to a point where it didn't have major issues. And it's hard to even think about what PoE 1 needs when PoE 2 has really obvious problems that need fixing.
Now, I can tell you that this was definitely going to happen because it happens every single time. I mean, the first time I was lucky enough to lead a game project, I was in a bind, right? We needed to ship. We didn't have enough developers to accomplish it. Now, one thing that a lot of people that are, veterans in large-scale group collaborative actions know is that most problems can't be solved by throwing bodies at them. It's not like you can just double the amount of developers and you can double the speed. However, there are some people, especially at a studio that's been around for a very long time, that have very exceptional skill sets that can solve problems that are very complex very quickly. And having those people on one project or the other can be very complicated. In fact, most studios end up taking those principal or senior people and end up putting them on a shared resource team, like a platform team or like a cinematics team that Blizzard does. And that way they can be loaned out to come to different groups doing different projects to make sure that that expertise goes to good use. I think that's what's happening right now with the Path of Exile 2 team, borrowing people from Path of Exile 1. However, after having this process happen to me 5-6 times, where I would either loan out some of my best devs to a project that was about to release, or I would borrow devs from another team for a project that we were working on that was about to release. After a while, I just started accepting the fact that if those developers ever went on borrow, it was probably your best bet to assume that they were never coming back, because many things happen. First of all, the projects that are releasing never run out of new things that they need. It's not like Path of Exile 2 is going to hit 0.2.0 and it's going to be done. No more work needed. No one likes the game. It's over. Stop putting out updates. It's not how it works. The needs of the project are going to continue to rise. They're going to continue to pop up, and those people are now going to be entrenched in that process because they're either some kind of critical path for the makeup of that team and how they accomplish things, or they're someone that actually just wants to be on that team in general. Humans in general like to have variety in their life, and oftentimes people will, like, if they've been working on one project for a very, very long time, once they break the habit of being on that one project, oftentimes will enjoy the new project more because it's something new and fresh. It's a new thing for them to sink their teeth into. It's updated, it's more modernized, it has new tools, things like that. So the developers usually end up enjoying the new project. Not always. Some people have an attachment to one or the other, but with this case, I would imagine that some of the developers, at least a non-zero amount, are people that move from Path of Exile 1 to help out full-time with Path of Exile 2 until its launch, and then found out that they like working on Path of Exile 2 more than Path of Exile 1, which means you kind of have this rift of people that don't really want to work on the old stuff, they just want to work on the new stuff.
And it's hard to even think about what PoE 1 needs when PoE 2 has really obvious problems that need fixing. We needed to get it to the point of stability and balance, and to fix the most severe deficiencies that PoE 2 has before we can take our eyes off it. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can't really work on PoE 1 3.26 until PoE 2 0.2.0 has shipped. And then, being honest, we probably need to support that for a couple of weeks after that as well. Now, in the meantime, we are going to get a bunch of pre-production done on 3.26 with whatever people who are not needed to fix issues with PoE 2. And once 0.2.0 is sorted, I promise we will devote as many resources as are needed from our company to get 3.26 done as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I just can't promise a date right now. Now, I'm really sorry for how this went down. Honestly, I should have predicted the fact that taking the PoE 1 team off PoE 1 would lead to this outcome, and I probably should have resisted doing it. But at every stage, I just kept thinking, we still have time, and then we didn't have time anymore. Now, we still have a lot to learn about how to run 2 games simultaneously. We were overconfident. We still need to work out how to structure our studio to make this possible. But we do have a solid plan for what we want to do with 3.26. Obviously, I can't talk about it yet, but I'm hoping you guys are going to love it. I really want to thank you guys for all your support over the years. You guys do deserve better than this, and we will get 3.26 out as fast as we can.
Now, I actually laugh a little bit at a couple more weeks after release. Usually that will turn into a couple months. And now it doesn't mean that they don't want to support PoE 1. I think that's definitely going to be the case. But I think that they've definitely made a lot of large promises with PoE 2. And PoE 2 also has an amazing reception. Like, if you just look at the monthly concurrent, the hourly concurrent, the amount of players that are interested to have bought the game, especially in a state where it's not even free to play, it is very obvious that this is their next big major opportunity, and slacking on this opportunity would be a major loss for Grinding Gear Games as a studio overall. So they are obviously very motivated and very incentivized to make sure Path of Exile 2 gets completed. They even mentioned that they want to be out of early access by the end of the year. However, we're now here at the end of the first month. We're like almost halfway through the first quarter of 2025. We still are missing 6 whole classes, 24 ascendancy options, as well as like 200 more mob types, 50 more unique bosses, more options for endgame, more maps, more gems, more weapons. There's a absolute boatload of things that the game is missing, on top of other things like fixing performance issues and crashes and network issues and things like that. They have easily 2 to 3 more years of hardcore development to get this game to a very ready state. And obviously, 6 months to a year was probably very unfair to them in general on whether or not they could get that done in the time frame. So I would expect that a large majority of the people that moved from Path of Exile 1 over to Path of Exile 2 as a temporary borrow. I laugh even now just remembering all the times that's happened to me. But a lot of those people, I imagine, are going to stay on PoE 2 because they prefer it. And I'm sure there's just going to be a shared group. The studio I used to work for ended up going through the same process. When you start releasing multiple games, you start realizing that there are some people that are more better suited for a global role, which means they work as almost like a contractor within the company. They go to solve key problems or really difficult problems for multiple groups. That's why there are lots of outsourcing studios that do art, or they come in for platforming reasons or engineering reasons or programming reasons. All of those are very true. And then you have the core developers that focus on the game full time, and they're always working on it, and you kind of have a mixture between those. Every major large studio has this kind of paradigm because it depends on what skill set the developers themselves have. So what does this mean for PoE 2? I think this is great news for PoE 2. It means that they're going to be heavily staffed. I think they got a lot more done in like Q3 and Q4 last year than they probably did in maybe like all of 2022. They boot camped a lot. And if you look at a lot of the interviews, they talked about how like the tooltip system wasn't even implemented like 2 months before the early access launch of Path of Exile 2. Like some programmers sat down and just like sprinted it, just like did like a 3-4 week run where they just focused only on getting skill tooltips, the nomenclature, the numbers, the damage readouts, like all that stuff, the pop-ups on your passive skill tree. All of those were just rapidly added at the end of development. And a lot of the functionality that we see in Path of Exile 2 right now for early access came online as part of that like hard focus boot camp where they brought all the developers in the studio together to just push on PoE 2 as hard as they can. And it sounds like they're continuing that at least until 0.2 comes out, which will probably be February or March, I would imagine, depending on what they want to include in that patch. And then there'll probably be at least a month or two after that of support to make sure it's still working, and also to get 0.3 ready to go, and whatever problems arise from that patch in general going forward. So as far as the next league launch or expansion launch for Path of Exile 1, if I'm being, charitable, it probably will be pushed back to April or May, or maybe even summer, but it may be sooner depending on how much they want to try and push into that. And I think this is probably expected, but let me know what you think. Are you someone who's playing Path of Exile 1 religiously and kind of upset by the fact that Path of Exile 2 is taking away from your league launches? Or are you a PoE 1 player that's playing Path of Exile 2 and just happy to have more content coming at you sooner and more quickly in Path of Exile 2 overall? Let me know down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.